So you don't like the term race, you prefer ethnicity. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably.
If for example, here's a hypothetical question. For example, if your mom's from India and your dad's from Sweden, okay,
Yeah.
what race would you be?
You'd be an other.
Interesting, yeah. So that's other, right?
Yeah,
How would
I
you
mean,
define? Is there a definition for it or no?
Well, unless I guess my wife is Taiwanese and my kids are half Taiwanese and half whatever I am, and basically it's we're if the kids want to select one, they can. Maybe they lean more towards the Indian side or the other side. I mean, it's just the way things are.
Do you prejudge people according to how they look?
Probably sometimes, not meaning to sometimes, but yeah, I mean, that's the idea, you know, when they say make the first impression counts the most, but not always true, because like one of the funny things that happened, like to the wife, some salesman, something came up to the door, and she answered the door, and he says, "Is the lady of the house at home?"
Right.
And
right.
so she says, "No speak English."
Oh,
and
okay. You say it's.
I close the door on him. Acting Asian or acting white. I mean, if I'm in Japan, I might, you know, I'll act a little. I say Asian, I'll bow, and of course that was years ago. I don't know how they do now, but
right. Do you want to adapt to the culture?
Yes.
Okay.
If possible.
Yeah, my dad and me like to actually distinguish people just because it's fun for us.
Yeah.
So sometimes yes, sometimes no. Depends.
And that's again there's nothing wrong with that. We're not judging you.
No.
You like to look and maybe you can say, well, that person looks like they're this and this.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yo sabía que tú eras peruana en cuanto te vi.
Good one.
When they say someone's acting white, what does that mean? You've heard that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you guys?
Well, from a high schooler standpoint, there's a certain way that people act based on like what they're wearing, how they perceive other people, if they've got the biggest ego ever. So it's more of a generalization as opposed to like a specific, oh, that person's white because they act this way.
What about acting black? You've heard that term too.
Definitely.
Typical ideas of ghetto perceptions or African perceptions of culture. Basically, how people think they typically act.
So stereotypes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it still useful though? Let's say you two are walking at night and you see a couple guys coming that quote unquote look like they might be gang related. Now these guys could be European with shaved
Yeah,
heads,
of course.
or it's 11 o'clock at night. You're the only people out,
Mm-hmm.
or they could be any color. Do you think that you take some precaution when you see somebody who looks to appear
Suspicious.
dangerous?
Well, you take precaution, but it's not necessarily just what they look like. It just be like what they're wearing could just make you think they could be gang related.
Or how they
Act.
act and perceive themselves.
So that does have some value in self-preservation, right?
Definitely. But it's not to the point of how I guess it used to be, at least how I see it. How it used to be like, oh, I shouldn't walk over there because there's something that will eat me.
Okay, that's fair enough. No. If I gave you a map, could you draw different races?
Different races?
I think we can, yeah.
Okay.
As far as
You
the
mean the
race
features of the
that
people?
we know.
Is race based? Okay, you're on to something. Do you believe race is based just on the superficial, outside features of the human?
Yeah. Yeah.
For
Most
example,
part.
right? If someone, let's say your father was from Sweden, your mother's from India, what are you?
Mix. Mix.
Biracial.
Mix.
And you grow up here.
Right. So let me ask you a question. This is just a hypothetical. Does it generate any feelings if you saw like a white woman with a Chinese man?
Yeah, to me, positive way.
Okay, it's positive. So
Yeah,
you
I
like
think-
to see people with different
Yeah,
ethnicities
eventually,
together?
I think
Yeah.
that's where we're going in the future. You know, race will be non. It's not an issue anymore because people now are, integrating in different races. Yeah, there'll be a point where you can't even tell which, like you said, which what do you call them? There's like a mix. You
I have a question. You all have kids?
know, this first
having-
one.
Okay, fantastic. Would it matter to you what ethnicity her husband or his husband was?
No.
No.
So you're okay
Yeah.
with that? Yeah. So there's no.
I think it'd be
As
cool.
long as they love each other.
Yeah.
Now, when you see someone coming from another direction, does your mind automatically put them into a group, a category, a race, an ethnic group?
Sometimes. I mean, it's just like you said, it's automatic for some reason.
Subconscious.
Yeah, yeah.
If you see somebody, I mean, is it wrong to say, well, that person looks Japanese?
I don't think it's wrong.
Is
I mean,
it
if
something
you
we
look-
all do? You think probably
Yeah,
naturally.
but
Human
you're not gonna say it loud or anything.
Criticize.
If your mother's from India and your father's from Sweden, for example, what would they label you? What would the census label you as?
Well, you'd be half Swedish and then half Indian.
So would you be able to? What would you? I mean, could you say that I'm a certain race, or that's?
I guess not, because
Would you call it mixed?
Mixed
mixed
cultures.
ethnicity?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, this moves into your feelings, and you're welcome to answer if you want it. How does it does it bring about any feelings if you were to see, for example, a Chinese man with a European woman?
Ama? So
Yeah, I
you
think
can do
it's
you can
good.
you can do whatever you want.
I
Okay,
think
good.
It's
So-
really good.
So it's positive.
Yeah, it's positive.
You see, like a European man with a woman, an African woman.
Same, positive.
Okay.
Positive vibes.
Do you think there's science behind the term race?
Yeah, because it's different in most people's opinions what race is. Like everybody has their own definition of race.
Yeah, but in my opinion, race is from what region you're from. You're from Middle
Yeah.
East, you're from Europe, you're Chinese,
Or from
you're
a half
African American,
Chinese.
or you're half Chinese, or wherever. It's
Yeah.
from where you were born or what family you were born into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you're saying everybody has their own kind of definition of what race might be.
Right.
Okay. So in your, I don't want to paraphrase you. Are you all? It's superficial, sort of.
Yeah.
That's the only way we can really make that judgment is superficially looking, and that's where
Correct.
we come up with it. Okay. What does it mean when someone's acting white?
Acting white? What
Yeah.
does that mean?
If
Yeah.
they said, "Oh, well, he's acting white,"
Oh no, I've never heard the
No,
term.
yeah. I mean, like people use that at school and stuff. I never understood it. Like the same thing with like every other color, like or every other like, skin color. Like,
so you have heard
You
people
can't-
say it that
Yeah.
way. He's acting white,
yeah,
and it would generally be for somebody who's probably not of European extraction, right?
yeah,
Because that would kind of
yeah.
it wouldn't have any meaning behind it. Or then maybe they say he's acting black.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think that means?
I don't know, because there's also stereotypes and stuff.
These are all stereotypes that they use, right? If you came to another country, let's say you moved to England, for example, and you said, I want to live in let's say you're Chinese, I want to live in a Chinese neighborhood. You think that's good or bad?
I mean, it depends. If you're not really familiar with whatever language that you're moving, like say if you don't know Spanish and you're moving to Spain, that's one of the mainly spoken languages there, and you'd probably want to go live
Where your own people are.
Yes, so they can help you.
Communicate.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
Do you think it's good to stay in those groups?
I mean, once you eventually learn the language,
Like you said, it's all about the language, being
Yeah.
comfortable. Like if I was an old lady, yeah, I would probably want to live with all the old Chinese people. If I was Chinese of descent, I would like to live where all the Chinese old ladies are living, rather than where all the white old ladies or the black old ladies are living, because I'd like to be around my own people. It has to do with age, language, how comfortable you are.
So, what percentage of African do you think you would need to be considered black?
Oh man.
So you
I don't.
Mhm.
Oh, are we talking about skin color alone, or are we just talking about in general?
We're talking about, well, how you see it.
So
if you think it's by skin color.
So I would say it doesn't have to be by skin color at all. Actually, I think it's mainly just kind of the culture that defines what, like, let's say, for example, like African. So there is South Africans. There is in South Africa a more white base than there is, let's say, a African American. Well, that wouldn't work. It's African American, but African sort of blacker skin tone in South Africa. But they would still be touted as Africans, whether of skin color being white or skin color being black. So I would say it's mainly more culture than it is actually anything else. So percentage, I don't know if that answers your question.
That does answer my question for your opinion on how you see it.
Right.
So you're saying percentage, you can't really measure it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really dependent upon how much involved you're in the culture. So like you can be a visitor of, like, let's say anywhere in Africa, but that wouldn't mean that you were necessarily African for you being a tourist or visiting.
Right.
It would be something where you adapt and adopt the culture and you live in that culture and participate in that culture. Then you would say that you are then African, in that case, or so on and so forth.
So would you say that black, the phrase, the term is more of a cultural thing rather than a race or ethnicity, like you are black?
No, I would definitely say the term black, white,
any of the colors.
Any of the color schemes, I think actually really is, the term would be racist in that sense, because you're grouping a ton of different, like, ethnicities with kind of even subcultures together. So Italians and Irish we consider now Caucasian or white. But their cultures, if you go to Italy, if you go to Ireland, are much, much different. You couldn't say that an Irish person in Italy is Italian, but people would say and group them as white because they fit a skin color and a sort of or not even but greater culture in terms of they're from Europe. They kind of have that European sort of vibe to them. But certainly I feel like the term white, black, Asian, that sort of thing is really doesn't do a good job at defining that, no.
Okay. What percentage of African do you think you would need to be considered black? Or the same for European or Asian? What percentage do you think you would need to be considered that race?
That's really it's not so much of a straightforward answer, because I don't know. I mean, the old rules don't necessarily apply like they did, but at the same time there's some relevance to that. I mean, myself, I recently had my DNA done, found out that I'm a pot of gumbo, human gumbo. So I actually, even with the terminology, I don't consider myself African American, I consider myself black. There's a part of my heritage that's black Indian. My people were already here, and they were, here on the land, and then there's some the culture that is from Africa itself, as well as some other places, Iberian Peninsula and so on and so forth. So when you talk about what percentage, I mean, it's the blood that's there, African blood or whatnot, is very strong. So it doesn't take much for that to be the case. But I think that people can embrace more than one part of their culture, such as myself. It doesn't have to be. You can consider yourself, you can be black and still embrace other parts of your culture. Like for me, Indian is a very strong part, so black Indian is another part that I very much claim as far as my,
Yeah, you should embrace all of who you are, not
Yes.
just one that stands out.
Exactly. I agree with that.
Do you judge people, or have you ever judged someone you've never met and that you've seen briefly on the street based off of their actions, clothing, hairstyle, or skin color?
Yes, I think we all do to some extent. We take that 10-second, whatever, I try not, now that I'm conscious that I do that, I try not to, but I think it's a human trait that we all do that to some extent.